So let's talk about alchemy and immortality. Now, alchemy and immortality are very reoccurrent in human culture throughout the ages, throughout recorded history. And I'd like to say that I didn't do any prep work for this video. This is going to be off the top of my head. So there may be certain things that I leave vague. But I'll go ahead and start with Taoist immortality. The idea of immortality through Taoism as we understand it, because most of the Taoist texts, most of the Taoist understanding and works were destroyed by the associates of Qin, the first Chinese emperor. They sought to destroy the knowledge of Taoism and the immortals so that they could have only the information useful to maintain their empire available to the populace. Now, in Taoism, immortality is the end-all be-all. You get to be immortal, and then from there on, not a lot is spoken about in the Taoist texts that we know of. The immortals are the ones that are prayed to. They serve, well, they're closer to the gods, and they are kind of emissaries to the gods in Taoism, in my understanding. Taoists practice a number of techniques to reach immortality. They do not participate in sexual activity. They do not intake toxicants. They do not take in foods that may shorten their lifespan or hurt them spiritually, hurt the force within them, the force that is equivalent within us in relation to the universe. Now, there's a whole bunch of different herbs and teas that Taoists might drink. There's a lot of martial arts involved in becoming immortal in Taoism, not necessarily because there's a need to fight, but there's a need to balance one's internal energy. There's a need to balance one's two different natures, yin and yang, the two sides of the force that are necessary for everything to exist as it does. And because of the necessity of balance, martial arts as a discipline, as an athletic practice, as a body honing technique is used in Taoism. And the alchemy part of it was experimented with quite a bit, as far as taking in different metals, different herbs, trying to figure out which ones were beneficial and which ones harmed oneself. Mercury was a Taoist, superstition that it could help one achieve immortality, and it turns out, obviously, if you take in these balls of mercury that many Taoists took in, they first drive you mad, then drive you to death. Now, going to India, which I actually believe has older alchemical, not only teachings, but practices that even come to the modern era, as far as different schools still being related to the schools that existed thousands of years ago, a continuation of those schools, if you will. I have read some about Indian alchemy. I'm Hindu, but I really haven't looked into Indian alchemy as much as other kinds of alchemy, but it seems that there was very rarely used practice of purifying oneself and then creating a certain mixture in a cauldron. This is an obscure practice, but I'll go ahead and mention it anyway because we're on the subject. Mixing a certain amount of ingredients into a cauldron, respecting all the four directions, north, south, east, west, and diving into this cauldron that's filled with burning ingredients, basically. And it was a thought to basically purify one's body to the extent that you have an astral body, a body that can ascend and can go beyond the gateways that divide this world, the material realm, from the worlds beyond, from the dimensions beyond, as we understand it nowadays. And this could symbolize death. This could symbolize a literal death of the body, and taking up a mantle that is appropriate to advance oneself towards the ultimate realization of God, the ultimate unity with God. And we do need an astral body in the vast majority of Indian practices in order to go beyond the material. There are a few people throughout history who were able to go into higher realms with their physical body. It's technically possible, but it is very improbable and very difficult to do so. You have to be very much on Dharma's side. You have to very much be purified as a person, not necessarily physically as well, but as a person, as far as your desires, your attachments, and your ability to be wisdom, not just practice the wisdom that you know, but be that, embody it. And Yudhishthira, from the Mahabharata, the Bhagavad Gita being in the Mahabharata, Yudhishthira was one of the few that was able to enter the kingdom beyond this one, in higher dimensions, the Swarg, the realm of the Devas, with his physical body. And this is alchemical in a way. The Mahabharata describes him climbing up this mountain with all of his brothers, all the other Pandavas, long after the war that happened in the Mahabharata. But he climbed up this mountain, and he was the only one that was able to make it to the top of this mountain. He climbed up with his brothers and his wife, and he was the one that could enter the realm of the Devas, the gods, with his physical body. There's a lot of symbolism here. The Pandavas, of course, represent different chakras within the human body, and Yudhishthira was the crown chakra, the one on top. And this could symbolize in us that the only way to reach higher dimensions with our physical body, and period, even if it's without our physical body, is if we have reached the crown chakra, the very top chakra, and expand beyond it. Otherwise, all the other chakras have limitations that will keep us here in the material realm. Now, when we go to Western alchemy and immortality, there's much more focus on the Philosopher's Stone, which is very symbolic. The Philosopher's Stone is is said to be an alchemical stone material, not necessarily a stone, but a material that can transmute lead into gold, and sometimes said to be able to make anything else into gold. Now, lead is a very toxic thing to humans. It can symbolize the material body, and transmuting it into gold basically represents the human body purifying itself internally, not necessarily with chemicals or with different metals or different external means, but purifying yourself within and making your consciousness into that gold that can move on, that can be spent in higher realms, if you will. And whether alchemists can actually, the ones in the highest levels, there's plenty of stories that say that lead can be literally transmuted into gold, which is possible by my understanding. But it mainly represents a purification and enlightenment of oneself. And alchemists were first and foremost transmuting their internal properties, their attributes, their fears, their weaknesses, their ego, their pains, their ignorances that had been developed over long periods of time, purifying that through internal alchemical work, through much meditation, contemplation, and internal chemical exchange, without the help of external means, was the main focus of alchemists, despite what many people think. External means are kind of on the fringe of alchemy, not necessarily at the center of its heart in Western alchemy. Now, these experiments that alchemists do are more to gain knowledge based on the elements that are external, so that we can transmute ourselves within, not by taking elements or making them a part of us, but by understanding their composition and being able to transmute them using our mind, using our psyche, using our spirit, using this physical body as an instrument to achieve the immortality of astral bodies, higher bodies, bodies that exist beyond the material realm. Reaching that point and going beyond is really the nature of alchemy, even in the West. Most definitely the nature of alchemy in the East. And as we learn more and more and find more and more documents relating to alchemy, we start to realize that it is an internal practice. So, most alchemists nowadays, Western alchemists, will place emphasis on it being an external practice, as far as doing different experiments to gain certain knowledge, but really the heart of it is always the internal purification of oneself. And immortality is also symbolic in and of itself. Immortality basically translates to beyond the physical, beyond the mundane, beyond that which traps our spirit and soul. Here in spirit and soul are different, even in alchemy. The spirit is more of a life force. The soul is more of the eternal matter, I guess you could, not necessarily matter, but eternal energy that pervades everything. That's behind just everything. And the spirit is a gift that can help us relate to the soul, can help us purify ourselves and reach a greater unification with the soul and a greater unification with God as a result. But I digress. Alchemy will always be like other religions with varying degrees of magnitude. As far as, the basic alchemists will always focus on the material. The higher up alchemists will always focus on internal transmutation, not external. And eventually the purpose is to gain immortality, to gain knowledge, to gain wisdom, and use that immortality to work towards a more complete union with the source. This is my understanding of alchemy. This is my understanding of immortality, and it is not shared by most alchemists, I would say. I'm just very basically an alchemist, but meditation is a definite technique just as much as any laboratory is in alchemy, because meditation and visualization and mental practices have to do with the internal needs necessary to reach these higher dimensions and this higher everlasting form of spirit that is immortality. So, in conclusion, alchemy and immortality are very complicated. These are things that have many different beliefs as far as the individual subject matter, different topics, and I've just summarized alchemy in my understanding. This is just a summary, even as far as what I know, let alone a summary of alchemy and immortality in the world. But I hope it's been interesting. I hope you found this useful, and I hope that this made you interested in learning more about alchemy and immortality. The goal, the goal sometimes. And I hope to hear your comments in the future. Feel free to shoot them down there, and please give this video a like if you liked it at all. And I will see you in the future, and maybe we can both reach immortality together.